The alarm clock next to Pinkie's bed sang its annoying jingly song at its usual hour that morning, just like so many other mornings before it. She lifted her leg aimlessly in the direction of the irritating sound, and finally managed to silence it after a few attempts before inadvertently dragging it off the end table and onto the floor. The sudden crash jolted her awake. She dragged herself from the side of the bed to inspect the damage to the clock from her comfortable position. Right now, though, she couldn't have cared if it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. She sighed heavily and flopped her face back onto her pillow. For the first time in a while, she simply wasn't ready to rise, shine, or attack the day. The soft mattress, fluffy pillow, and warm blankets beckoned her to stay, but she had prior obligations that morning that she had to keep. She did make a promise, after all, and despite not being one of her signature Pinkie promises, she was still sworn to it. Applejack had run behind a bit with the bucking that week, thanks to a minor but bothersome injury, and didn't want a repeat of what happened months ago when she cooked up a batch of baked bads or sent Rainbow Dash careening into the library. Pinkie and the others had agreed to lend their hoof that day and hopefully get her back on track. Still laying on her stomach, enjoying every extra second possible, she flopped the covers away and crawled out of bed. After replacing the clock under the end table, relieved that it still worked, she dragged herself to the dresser and looked at herself in the mirror. Pinkie was a wreck. She had thrown a party 6 days in a row prior to yesterday. The only reason she hadn't bothered to throw another one that day before was that the Cakes wanted to take a day for themselves and had asked Pinkie to watch the twins for them. Thursdays were generally slower than most days of the week, and thankfully for Pinkie, that trend had continued. Trying to balance watching the twins and dealing with a steady stream of customers would have been more than she could handle. Even though it was relatively mercifully a slow day during the day, the night had other plans. The Cakes were delayed on their return for a few hours and didn't get home until well after the moon was overhead. Pinkie had wanted to go to bed early to catch up on some rest, but she was forced to stay up later than she had wanted, watching Pumpkin and Pound. She headed for the bathroom for a nice, hot shower. She silently prayed it would snap her back to reality, but after she had finished up, she didn't look any less exhausted than she did before. After toweling herself off, her hair poofed to its usual curly style, and she forced a smile onto her face. It took more strength than she had, and after a moment, the smile fell into an uncharismatic frown, coupled with large bags hanging from her eyes. Feeling defeated, she carried herself downstairs. A few minutes after arriving in the lobby, and checking the store out one final time before heading out, Rainbow Dash entered Sugar Cube Corner. She had a bounce in her step that morning, similarly to how Pinkie typically does. Her cloud bed had been kind to her that night, and she was raring to go. "Hey, Pinkie, what's up? Ready to head over to Sweet Apple Acres?" Rainbow had a good look at the party pony, and grimaced. "Geez, you okay? You don't look so good." Pinkie perked up as best as her groggy state would let her. "Sure am, Dashy. Just a little tired, but I'm fine." Rainbow chuckled. "You? Tired? Good one, Pinkie. That's something I never thought I'd hear. I'm going to fly on ahead. I'll see you there." As the Scion Pegasus flew away, Pinkie sighed. "The one time I'm being serious, and no pony believes me," she mumbled to herself. With a large yawn, she headed out the door. Even though the one closer to Sweet Apple Acres was Fluttershy, Pinkie was one of the last ones to arrive. The only one that took longer was Rarity, and not by much, despite how much further away Carousel Boutique was, and how long it took the sophisticated pony to get ready. She even had to pick out just the right shampoo to bring with her to wear during lunch, lest the midday sun get in her eyes or make her sweat and cause the makeup to run. Most of the morning, Pinkie dragged through the work, taking much longer to knock apples from their branches than the others. They were too caught up in what they were doing to ask if she was all right, even though it was plain on her face. She even caught herself leaning against a couple of tree trunks asleep. No pony mentioned seeing her in such a precarious position, so she tried not to think about it. She didn't want to let her friends down, after all. As lunch crawled closer, She hoped that the food Fluttershy brought would give her a little boost for the afternoon. Applejack had eaten quickly and gotten back to bucking sooner than the rest. Rainbow Dash spent her lunch relaxing on a cloud, and she decided to run and grab when they stopped for a break. Twilight was going over the projected schedule and bucking route on some papers she brought. Rarity and Fluttershy sat and gossiped while they ate. The normally hyperactive Pinkie nibbled at her daisy sandwich without saying a word. The orange earth pony had gotten a few more trees taken care of when the one she was working on cracked from the strength of her kicks. It was a deep and wide break, but the tree stood. The loud snaps got the attention of the others, including the exhausted Pinkie. "Ah, shoot!" Applejack sighed. "This is one of the older trees in this orchard. It's so much larger than the other trees, you see. One of our most productive trees, too. I've seen plenty of cracks before, thanks to all the bucking we do on these things, but not like this one. We'll probably need to take her down. Poor thing." "How long does it take to remove a tree?" Pinkie asked. Depends on how deep the roots go, really. Can take anywhere from a couple hours to several. Being an older tree, it's more likely to take a while," Applejack explained. "But it should be okay for now. We still got a long way to go before we done bucking today's trees. Otherwise, I'd say we take care of it now. But me and Mac can take care of it tomorrow." Pinkie took another look at the jagged crack in the massive trunk. "Well, I suppose. It's just that," she tried to say before she was cut off by a twitchy tail. She forgot how tired she was upon seeing her tail going crazy. "Eep! Girls! My pinky sense is tingling!" She looked skyward, trying to spot what could possibly randomly fall out of the sky. But it had been a clear day so far. She turned nervously towards the tree and began to sweat. "Pinkie, dear, I trust Applejack's judgment on the matter. If she says the tree will be fine until tomorrow, then it'll be fine," Rarity said. "She's been doing this sort of thing long enough, so she probably knows what she's talking about." The posh pony looked through the dense orchard and raised a hoof to her chin. Applejack obviously was more familiar with the acres of land, but trying to find the damaged tree the next day could possibly take more time away from actually removing it than she and her brother would like. With this in mind, Rarity had the idea of pulling off the bright purple bow adorning her hat, albeit rather grudgingly, and wrapping it around one of the lower branches. Applejack and Pinkie were the only ones who noticed the unicorn's actions, and didn't know what to make of it. "What's that for?" Pinkie finally asked. "Well, I thought that the purple would stand out well against the sea of greens and browns, and make it easier for Applejack to find the tree tomorrow when she and Big Mac come here to dispose of it," Rarity explained, almost too proud of her idea. I guess that makes sense," Pinkie admitted, rubbing the back of her neck uncertainly. "I think we should at least pull it down, just in case, you know?" Rarity chuckled at Pinkie's instance. "Darling, Applejack and Big Mac will take care of it. Don't worry so much." Suddenly, there was a soft ruffle from the grass behind the broken tree. Pinkie and Fluttershy looked around the trunk and saw a squirrel lying on the ground. It hadn't been there a minute ago. Fluttershy darted over to the critter with a gasp. "Oh my goodness! Are you okay?" She picked up the furry friend and checked him for any injuries. It pointed to a small hole overhead in the middle of the trunk, where 3 other squirrels were peeking from. 2 appeared to be smaller than the others. "Oh, is that your family?" The squirrel nodded its head. "Did you fall out of your hole, checking to see what all the commotion was?" It nodded again. Fluttershy giggled. "Looks like your pinky sense was right after all." A tired grin found its way to Pinkie's face. "I guess so. Fluttershy, will you help me pull this tree down, please? You've been listening. I'd rather not leave it like this." She was starting to wonder if it was paranoia or fatigue that was making her carry on about a situation that seemed to already have a solution. "Well, I'm not as strong as Applejack or Rainbow Dash, but I'll help. Just let me find a new home real quick for my little animal friends, and I'll see what I can do," Fluttershy said. "But can't they just hang out for a minute somewhere out of the way?" Fluttershy had a hoof on Pinkie's shoulder reassuringly. "Don't worry, it shouldn't take long to find another tree with some shelter for them." The squirrel family skittered down the tree trunk and met up with the tiny father, ready to follow the yellow Pegasus to wherever she led them. Pinkie slouched low, frustrated that her words were falling on deaf ears. "Why do they have such a hard time taking what I say seriously sometimes?" she thought to herself. "I know I can be hyper and random a lot, but still." She tried to pay it no mind. Fluttershy did agree to help, which was more than Applejack or Rarity could say right now. Rainbow was still lounging at the time, intent on taking a bit longer of a break than the others. She was the fastest mare in Equestria, so a few extra minutes wouldn't hurt any pony. Seeing Fluttershy leading the squirrel expedition gave her an almost mean idea. She and Pinkie agreed a long time ago not to prank Fluttershy, but they didn't say anything about her little friends. When she had an opportunity to sneak off unnoticed from the others, she sped away and returned a minute later with a rain cloud. She hovered herself over the intended prank victims and righted herself. Twilight was just finishing up her lunch, ready to bring her work over to Applejack and go over the papers again. So far, they had made fair time, but she felt they could do better, and had spent most of her break drawing up some possible ways to shove some time off their chores. She lifted the parchments, and boom! A sudden loud thunderclap made Twilight jump and accidentally fire a small blast of magic in some random direction, one of which nearly hit Pinkie. Unfortunately, it didn't miss the tree behind her, and she was vigilantly guarding. The magic connected right on the crack and splintered some of the exposed heartwood, causing the rift to widen even further. Fluttershy squirrels had darted away at the noise the second it happened. The two ponies looked up angrily at Rainbow and chastised her as she rolled on her cloud, laughing at her own antics. "Come on, guys! That almost hit me!" Pinkie yelled fruitlessly. All their bickering and scowling at each other drowned out the pink pony's pleas. Her weariness started eating away at her patience. "Will some pony listen to me?" A few quiet crackles coming from behind caused Pinkie to freeze up and hold her breath. Any exhaustion she had completely disappeared in an instant. The breaking of wood under intense weight, coupled with a loud, ominous moan, spun her around, and she screamed as the old tree started to fall towards her. A moment later, she was silenced. A sickening crunch, followed by the snapping of twigs and rustling of leaves on the ground, took every pony's attention away from what they were doing. "But Pinkie?" Twilight whispered nervously. The five anxiously approached the fallen tree that their friend had asked repeatedly for help with, silently begging that what they were all thinking wasn't true. A few feet from the stump, beneath the trunk, a single pink leg stuck out motionlessly. They gasped as one. Twilight's horn flared, and she grabbed the large tree, trying desperately to pull it off Pinkie. It was still partially stuck to the stump and wouldn't budge. Fluttershy and Rarity were on the verge of hysterics, weeping openly at what they feared. Rainbow and Applejack dashed over and pushed at the connection with all their strength until it finally came apart. Twilight tossed the tree away the second she could, tears matting the fur on her cheeks. They finally saw their friend. "Oh, no,"